Hello everyone, my name is Tom, and this is a quick chat about a specific topic in animation. So let's talk about Season 3 of Castlevania. There was a lot going on, a lot of violence, as always, a lot of stuff that the YouTube overlords would probably rather I not discuss. Some devout followers of the Lord flip-flopped to worship Satan, and I can relate, cause here's the thing, I flip-flopped since Season 2, and I can admit that. Season 2, I felt there was too much focus on Dracula and his court telling stories of dudes who I really couldn't care less about, and even if I could, it was spoiled in the fact that I wanted to see more of the trio of Sypha, Trevor, and Alucard, because Season 1 was building up to that alliance just to pull the spotlight away from them until the end of the next season, which I definitely feel like there was more balance in Season 3 between all the stories that were happening, but the story which I was most invested in was Isaac's. Yes, one of the characters on the side of things in Season 2 where I said we really didn't need to spend that much time with them. Now I'm like, yo, can I get more from this dude and his story, because it's honestly the most interesting thing going on, which is kinda hypocritical on my part, I know, and I will own up to that fully. Especially because a big part of Isaac's story now plays off of all of that time spent with Dracula and his court, because what Season 2 was aiming to establish is the fact that Dracula isn't a bad person at heart. He was just too hurt and alien to society to have the amount of power he did without letting his emotions lead him to doing irredeemably awful things. Because hurt people. When humans kill your wife and you have the ability to unleash a demonic army of baby-eating monsters on humanity and no social experience to realize why that's really bad, I'm not gonna say it's right to go that route, but it's also not hard to see how that can make sense from a perspective of hysterical resentment over something that is legitimately traumatic. So Season 2 was desperately trying to humanize that motivation for Dracula, coming together for a moment where he lets his son slay him after the clarity of seeing the monster he's become. But in his death, Dracula leaves behind two human subjects that agree to help him in his vengeful plan against the human race. One of them being Hector, who seems to just be really gullible. Even in Season 3, he lets his pee-pee get him enslaved by a vampire, so like, he is clearly pretty naive. We're killing all humans, and I'm a human. It will probably maybe be fine. But on the other hand, you have Isaac, who seems to be much more motivated by his own ideology, which made him much more open to aligning with Dracula, saying, if I die, I die. Dracula recruited these humans, despite his mission to take revenge on the human race as a whole, because he needed Forge Masters, who can reanimate the dead. Something Dracula needs to build an army, and which we learn from Isaac is a magic that can only be practiced by humans. And Isaac agreed to be a part of this plan because Isaac's past experiences have left him jaded. He believes that humanity is intrinsically evil because of the way society and individuals have always cast him aside and mistreated him. So of course he would jump at the opportunity that Dracula was presenting him, because he wants to see humans removed from the earth, and if it's at the cost of death, then it means nothing to him, because Isaac doesn't fear death. But in this season, Dracula is dead, and that greater purpose that Isaac had is now gone. Now his purpose is to take revenge on Hector and Carmilla, the members of Dracula's court who betrayed him, which led to his death. So he builds an army of the undead, traveling across the world on his own personal journey towards that goal, but along the way he finds himself confronting the ethics and practicality of his worldview, specifically in his stance on humanity, because it does lack nuance to believe that all of humanity is cruel and the world is better off without us. Broadly painting all of the human race as evil for isolated experiences is a pretty narrow view, especially since the homie's walking around killing and reanimating people into monsters at the first sign of conflict. That's gonna get you some pushback, dude. Like, these are the same people who thought a woman practicing science was the same as witchcraft and burned her at the stake. Walking around with a gang of the undead is going to trigger a lot of fight or flight when you go into populated areas. But because Isaac is traveling and encountering different types of people, he now has to confront the duality of the human race. He has to confront the fact that though humans have a tendency to be cruel, they also have a tendency to be kind. Isaac is shown kindness and charity by strangers who try to empathize with him and his experiences, even when they don't have to. The most formative of these encounters is with the captain, who forgot his name long ago, so we just call him the captain. Isaac, after being shown that he's not welcome in a city, heads to a pier, assumedly to conquer and steal a boat to reach his next destination. But the captain of the ship he sets his eyes on calmly assesses the situation and explains to Isaac that though there is no reason that he could couldn't kill him and his crew to take ownership of his ship, why do sailors exist and ships have crews if they weren't necessary to sail? So the captain was looking out for Isaac in this situation just as much as he was looking out for himself and his crew. Yes, he was saving his own skin by diplomatically explaining to Isaac why it was in his best interest to approach the situation peacefully, but he wasn't begging for mercy or pleading for his life to be spared. He was bringing to Isaac's attention that this was a situation where he would need the help of someone with skills Isaac doesn't have, skills the captain has, and is willing to lend to Isaac's cause for the promise of no harm being done to himself or his crew, which Isaac, being reasonable, agrees to. After setting sail, the captain, partly out of boredom, starts to ask Isaac about his life, asks about his time serving Dracula. He asks what happened, how he ended up where he is now, but most importantly, I think this was the first time Isaac felt seen and heard by another human. Part of Isaac's loyalty to Dracula came from Dracula's empathy for how Isaac had been treated by humans. As Isaac put it, Dracula was the only one who had ever lifted a hand to protect him from anything. Dracula treated Isaac with genuine respect, leading to Dracula refusing Isaac's insistence on defending him with his life. Dracula told him that at best, what he had was too valuable to the world to throw away, and at worst, he deserved better than to sacrifice himself for a man acting out of grief-driven rage. Dracula offered Isaac a validation that he desperately needed going back to his upbringing, being treated like trash, being physically beaten. Through Dracula, he had a figure of importance and guidance in his life who treated him with value, which had to be formative for Isaac in his worldview. Humans treated him with cruelty, and Dracula showed him decency. So if Dracula is such a monster like everyone says, then what does that say about humanity? But the captain, Isaac's fellow man, treating him with the same respect, listening to and engaging with his stories, trying to understand his worldview, and offering his own counterpoints and questions that challenge that view to help expand on it. But not doing so in a way that is lecturing, rather in a way that says, I respect your positions and why you feel that way, but this is what my experiences have taught me. That was all enough to challenge Isaac's view on humanity. It didn't change his view, it didn't make his heart turn, but it was enough to make him seriously consider the counter-arguments to his beliefs. Prior to this, he was treating his ideology with a self-fulfilling prophecy. He believed that man was cruel, and any instance he encountered of cruelty from man was confirmation of that. But now he realized that just because that exists doesn't mean that's all humanity has to offer. He searches his heart, he asks questions, and it almost seems like a large part of him wants to believe that humanity can be redeemed. But every anecdote, every situation he encounters, only seems to prove him right with small exceptions. The difference being, now he has some hope. He's no longer given up on people and wants to find it in himself to care again. But in the cold and barbaric world of Castlevania, that's difficult. But luckily, Isaac is in a position of security in his power that he feels safe enough to give the people he encounters the benefit of the doubt. He's not worried about being beaten or taken advantage of again, because he knows that if anyone does cross him, he has an army of the undead that will take care of it for him. The final human Isaac encounters in this season is Miranda, a magic user like Isaac, who he finds alone in an abandoned town, and she tells him he won't find any fresh bodies to reanimate there because the wizard of a nearby town possessed all of the surrounding population into an army of what she compares to worker ants. Isaac asks her if she has magical capabilities, why did she do nothing to stop it? Possibly under the assumption that she has a common view on humanity, or she is another example of the cruelty that he's become familiar with. Perhaps she was happy to see her fellow villagers be taken, but the answer is a bit more tragic. She simply wasn't strong enough to do much more than preserve herself and nobody else. Despite the power magic granted her, life has taken its toll on her, and she's not what she used to be. Something that Isaac, through all of his trials and tribulations, is able to empathize with. Hearing her describe how she had to watch this happen to her community, powerless to do anything. It brings back feelings of how he was powerless to watch Dracula face his death, powerless to defend the bit of purpose in life he had, and this is allowing him to be sensitive to her grief. In return, Miranda shows empathy for Isaac's plot for revenge on the people who betrayed Dracula. She encourages him to go to the wizard, kill him, use his resources, and reanimate the people that were taken into his own army of the undead. For one, because he'll need the power to overtake Syria, where Carmilla is residing with Hector, and because after all the people have been through being mentally enslaved, she believes that death will be merciful. So he takes her advice. Then once it's all said and done, he sits in the empty city full of people beyond saving and decides to leave it standing. Maybe as a monument, or maybe with the hope or dream even, that one day the city will be occupied again. A dream that he thinks is far-fetched, but he entertains anyways. So we leave Isaac's story seeing that maybe he doesn't believe that humans are worth redemption yet, but he's willing willing to halt his destructive intentions enough to give them the chance to be better, because he's now seen a few strangers show him genuine kindness, and that leaves him a bit hopeful. What makes Isaac so interesting in this part of the story is he's neither a protagonist or an antagonist. He's just someone who has always wanted to be what he perceived as a force for good in the world, but is now asking the questions to figure out what that really means to him. But as always, we want to hear what you think. Who do you think had the most interesting story in Season 3 of Castlevania? Let us know in the comments down below, or you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you can find me at TommyPQM on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button and share with your friends, and if you haven't already, please hit subscribe and click the bell for notifications to never miss a video. With that being said, my name is Tom, I hope you have an awesome day, and I'll see you next time. See ya!